Good morning, everybody. So we left AFCOE early, and one of the things that you do in AFCOE is you do a 1-minute testimony, and then you do a 25-minute testimony. And that's something I really, really wanted to do because even though I did my testimony before in Japan and I did another little mini testimony, first off, I've never done it before with slides, and it's always like our testimony keeps growing and changing. So that's my disclaimer before I go and I do first my 1-minute testimony. I honestly, usually I'm the type of person to write and type things out, but I've been inspired by some of the other testimonies that I've seen to go ahead and just, you know what, go for it. Be not my usual self. So let's do something different. 1, 2, 3, go. So I was born in New Jersey. We were Catholic growing up, and it wasn't until I was about 13, 14 that my parents found Adventism. We weren't necessarily the best Adventists. And so we moved from New Jersey to South Florida, and we started attending a Spanish church there, which wasn't really good for me because I didn't know Spanish very well. My home life wasn't as good as everybody thought. So when the time came, I left the house and I joined the military, going from one small cage to a bigger cage. And because I didn't have a good foundation, I compromised and basically got to a point where I was doing whatever I wanted and I didn't have God in my life. But then through a incidence of events, I somehow ended up retiring from the military, got stuck at home because of COVID, and found God again in the most unlikely of places, which had me willing to sacrifice all the things that I thought were important in my life. And God has restored that to me and even more. And now I'm here to serve his mission. Thank you. Okay, so that was 57 seconds and 70 milliseconds. I don't know, 57.70. All righty, cool. Whoa, that was tough because I didn't even try practicing it and I didn't really get it before. And sometimes I just never know what I'm actually going to say. One of the things I do is I usually write things and then I let Jesus take the wheel. So here we go with the 25 minutes with slides. Boop. As I mentioned, I was born in New Jersey and we were Catholic. I had the whole Catholic experience, the white dress and everything, but we weren't good Catholics. We just kind of went whenever we wanted to. And as I mentioned, when we were 13, 14, my parents found Adventism. What had happened was my mom found somebody that they bumped into that they knew from Peru, because my parents are from Peru, and it was somebody that you wanted to avoid. But she said that when she saw him, he looked different. He had something in his eyes. So that's what brought them to Adventism. And as I mentioned, or at 13, 14, I decided to get baptized. We did something called La Fe de Jesus, which is like the faith of Jesus. It's like this program. And we used to be really involved in church, but it's kind of like other people have mentioned. We were really involved in church during the Sabbath, but during the week, we just did whatever we wanted, watched whatever we wanted. I even had an Adventist boyfriend who was Peruvian, so I thought that was it. Adventist boyfriend who was Peruvian, but he actually developed some really bad habits in me. Like we watched horrible movies and we did a lot of things that we shouldn't have been doing. And it made me realize that sometimes not always the best people are in church, which makes sense. Because people always like to tell you, oh, don't date a guy at the club, date a guy from church. Not everybody who is in church is, transformed or converted either. So I didn't have, now let me show you my slideshow. As you can see in the pictures, I'm dressed very goth because I was totally into being goth. I was very into that, but that wasn't my complete identity. I was also very peace-loving hippie. And it's funny how God took me from one place to the other place. I think I was just always looking for an identity, something that made me feel in control of my life. And because we had a happy family. And before I go into this portion, this is not to, I don't want to speak for my parents, but we were called a happy family because anytime we had to go out in public, we had to play, we would actually say, let's play happy family. So everything looked nice. And unfortunately, I also took that later on in my life, in my own family. There was alcoholism, there was physical abuse, there was violence, there was cheating, and there was a lot of insecurity and anxiety in my household. And so things were not as perfect as they seemed, and that's crazy how you think how those things affect the way you grow up and the way you're raised. We were raised, don't let a man treat you that way. You don't need a man to be happy. Be strong and independent woman who don't need no man. And that's funny how that instills something in you. So eventually my parents do get divorced and they both remarried. They're both still with their partners now. And I love both of my step-parents very much. But when the time came, all I wanted to do was escape. I just wanted to escape. Even though where I lived in Florida when we moved from New Jersey to Florida. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. Like a little cartoon bird would land on my shoulder. Ma, 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 ma. I drove a Camaro. Life was good. I had a job at Albertsons. I just wanted to escape. And because I didn't speak Spanish very well. And it's funny because growing up, um, because we're where we lived in New Jersey, there weren't a lot of Hispanic people. So I hated myself for being Hispanic. And that's why I think I still don't speak Spanish as well as I did, because during those years when I should have really been absorbing it, I was kind of shunning it. I actually just told someone a few weeks ago that when I was young, I would actually put baby powder on myself to try to make myself look lighter. Yeah, it's a little embarrassing. But when we moved to South Florida, though, I fully embraced being Hispanic. I had the CD with the flag on it, be like, oh, I'm so Peruvian, which is funny because I'm born in the States. So that's kind of funny. As I mentioned, I joined the military to get away, to escape from everything, because even though everything seemed perfect here, I just wanted freedom. That's all I wanted, was freedom and independence. And so I just went, as I mentioned, from a smaller cage to a bigger cage. Because in the military, you literally turn in, you're like, oh, here you go, here's my soul. Let me move the slides so that way you can see. Um, Ironically enough, I was supposed to go into the military immediately after high school. But what had happened was my boyfriend at the time scared me out of it. And so I called the recruiter's office and said, I'm not doing this. I'm not joining the military anymore. And then he's like, hold up, I'm going to have a guy call you. And this officer calls me and basically convinces me that, hey, guess what? That, you know what, how about if you wait a few months, enjoy your summer, and then then you can join the military. So I ended up, instead of going to the military in May, I ended up joining the military in September. I was supposed to fly out September 11th, but as you all know, September 11th, 2001, my flight got canceled. And basically, it wasn't until, thank you, a week later that I joined the military. My official date of enlistment is September 17th, 2001. Went to basic training, but guess what? They didn't tell me that there was services on Saturday, so I go to church service on Sunday. And because I'm compromising, I don't keep the Sabbath on Saturday like the way I do. I basically eat whatever I want anyways. So it's just compromising. I go to tech school. I had a boyfriend at the time. I was not faithful to him. We broke it off because he said, I want you to have the college experience, because he already had the college experience. And because apparently, even though you're raised to not need a man, and you don't let people treat you that way, that's not, sometimes what you're told is not what you see. And I was given the message of, you do need a man, and you can't be complete unless you have a man. So I could tell you, for a majority of my lifetime, I've been in, I'm serial monogamous, where I've always been in a relationship, or I've always been involved with people. So you can piece those things together. So what happened after I broke up with that guy? Not even a little bit later, I met a guy in tech school, and we're together. After 2 months, we decided to get married. I didn't even really know his real name. I was like, because we called him Cookie, and I'm like, oh, what's your name before we get married? He's Matthew. I'm like, oh, your name's Matthew. Oh, okay, well, I'll just keep calling you Cookie. And on legal paper, your name is Matthew. So, and because of him, because we knew that if we didn't get married, the military will separate us. I was going to go to South Carolina, and he was going to Missouri. So we ended up going with him to Missouri, where they have the B-2 bomber. And that's what the picture is. You see me underneath the B-2. And we used to have the BDUs. This shows you how old this is, because those are like 2 uniforms ago. And the other photo is me at Airman Leadership School with some amazing people whom I love very much. But the military, when you compromise on one thing, the next thing you know, you're working on Sabbath. And then you start drinking, because that's how you socialize. It was funny because there was a period of time I actually didn't drink, because I got drunk at least 3 times before the age of 18. And I was like, okay, I hate drinking. This is horrible. I'm never going to do this again, until I became like somewhere between 22 to 24. And like, hold on, as I mentioned, there was a lot of really good things that came out of the military. I got to go to Turkey. I was in Japan. I got to participate in a lot of races. I met my husband. I got to take my family to amazing sites. I got to work with all the military branches. It was a really amazing experience. I got to go to my dream place, was Okinawa, snowboarding, skiing. There's a lot of historical things I got to see. Was eye surgery. I had my braces. I know I have a bad habit of sometimes talking about the negative parts of the military, but I always fail to embrace the fact that if not for the military, I would not have made the friends I've made, what I would call my chosen family. Because when you're away from your actual family, The people who you're with, those are your family. They're the ones who are there when your car breaks down. They're the ones who are there on those lonely nights. They're the ones who are there when you don't know, um, where to go, what to do, and sometimes you just need someplace to go, and that's who our military family is. We are each other, and only we will understand what we have been through, because no, it's a different world. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of good things. There are a lot of bad things. I married Cookie in 2002, and we got divorced in 2008, and that's because of all the partying and drinking, and I cheated on him, and I thought he deserved something better, so I divorced my husband. They say that if your parents get divorced, more likely there's a higher chance of your kids getting divorced, and all three of my sisters and I have all gotten divorced. Um, as I mentioned, I cheated in multiple relationships. I had a very promiscuous lifestyle. I got really big into alcoholism. I turned myself into what would be the military's version of AA. It's called ADAPT, and they said, "You're not even that bad." And I'm like, "This is not that bad. It's pretty awful." And abuse, it's crazy because I wasn't just verbally abusive, because I used to say the worst things. Like, I knew how to hurt somebody. My mom would say, "Oh, I killed this person. They don't even know it," which is a weird thing to say. But I have also been physically abusive, and that also makes me feel bad, because a lot of people underplay the fact that men can also be physically abused. I wasn't horrible, but let's put it this way: I definitely should have been arrested. I should have been arrested. I should have been kicked out of the military. But I guess there's mercy, grace. I don't know. But essentially, at one point in my life, I did tell God I wanted him to look away, because after I got divorced, I was free to do whatever I wanted. I can be with whoever I wanted. I can do essentially everything. I ate whatever I wanted. Actually, I got really big, because when you drink, you eat, so you get big. And I became very confident in my voluptuousness. Right? I was like, "Ooh, I'm big," and I used to say, "I'm fat." That means fabulous and tempting. So yeah, you want all this, and it's embarrassing to say that. But there was a small window of hope. I went to Afghanistan, and it's crazy because I was also in debt from the divorce. I went to Afghanistan, and they would have delayed reportings on Fridays and on Sundays. And because of that, because people would go to church on Sunday, and I was like, no, if I'm going to go to church, I'm not going to church on Sunday. I'm going to church on Saturday, because I know the Sabbath truth. So I became Adventist while I was in Afghanistan. And it was literally only for that small window. They gave me a few hours on Saturday to go to church. And thankfully, we had an Air Force chaplain, which I've never met we had an Air Force Adventist chaplain. I've never met one ever before then or after since. And we had like only 4 or 5 of us. A couple of us were Air Force, a couple of us were Army. And when he left, because eventually you have to leave, he put me in charge of the program. So that's even funnier, because I was doing bad things in Afghanistan also, but he put me in charge. And somehow that little bit brought me back to God. And when I came back to Mississippi, because that's where I was stationed at, I started going back to church. But I still hadn't changed. I was still had like one foot with God and one foot with the enemy. And, that's very unstable ground. Just like Matthew 12:44-45 says, once those demons leave you, if you don't clean things up properly, or you do, but you don't fill it up with God, they come back, and it comes back worse, like with a vengeance. So what are some worse things? So I got really huge into yoga. I even tried to become a yoga instructor. Something kept preventing me from completing the course. And that's kind of funny. I think that's God, because I was just like, why is this not happening? And even when I read the instructions and everything, I could tell there wasn't something right, something very spiritual. But you just push in the back of your head. Why? Because I can't think clearly, because I'm watching all this anime and horror movies, because I'm into all that stuff. I was into Dungeons and Dragons, something that I played with my ex-husband and been playing it off and on throughout my military career. By the time I met my current husband, Andy, I got really into this thing called frequencies. Now, let me tell you something. This is why it's important for you to see the right therapist, because the therapist I saw told me, your family is the reason for everything basically bad in my life, and that you need to cut them off of your life. And you need to listen to these frequencies, because we're all made of vibrations. That's why people say positive vibes or negative vibes. And I should have known better that was new agey stuff, but I was already so ready to just cut everything off with my family. I'd done all these really horrible things at this point. And so I go basically essentially divorce my family. But by the grace of God, he is my stepdad to mediate between the family, and that held us together by like a string. Um, because I was in the military and because I also worked with the Navy. No offense to the Navy, but they literally curse like a sailor. That the expression is not joke. And because of that time with the Navy, I could not go a sentence through without saying a bad word. It was like a minimum. And even at one point when I was visiting my sister, I'd be like, you know what, Layla has to get used to bad words because that's just how I am, you know. And I give my family a warning. I'm like, this is who I am. You can't change me, and it's so childish. But essentially, at this time in my life, I got to a point where I didn't even know if God existed. I was like, maybe there's something out there, but I don't know if it's God. Oh, so going back to, because this is a really important part of my journey, is I met my husband in 2019, and he met me at like that worst point in my life. We met through Dungeons and Dragons, and we had what seemed like a really good, amazing relationship at first because we were into all the same things. We loved Star Wars. We were huge Star Wars fans. Like I read the books and the comics, the novels, the games. Like people are like, "Oh, I'm into Star Wars." I'm like, "Nah, you don't even know. I was into Star Wars." We had our own lightsabers. We had our own droids. We did a Disney cruise because it was Star Wars related. We love anime. I used to have like all the posters, the little figurines. I loved horror movies. He didn't like horror movies, but I loved horror movies. Like Freddy Krueger was my man, the man of my dreams and my nightmares. People don't seem to understand but all these things connect together. I was a huge Beatles fan. As you guys know, the Beatles are also very spiritual. I was really into System of a Down, but I also loved a lot of Japanese drama because we love drama. One of my friends just recently said to me, "You love romance stuff," and I'm like, "No, but I do. I can't deny the fact that I'm a mushy person." So I also loved Japanese. There's one Japanese boy band called Arashi, and I I had two loves in my life. It was Hotohori and Tsukasa Domyoji. Hotohori was a Japanese anime guy, and Tsukasa Domyoji was from a manga, and these two people were the loves of my life. No one else would ever replace them, right? There was even a song called Torn Between Two Lovers, and it was both of them. It was not even my husband at the time. He was like, "I can't believe my wife is singing a song called Torn Between Two Lovers, and I'm not even one of them." And it's like, yeah, that's right. Anyways, so going back to being married with Andy. So it was all cool, but it also wasn't cool. We got pregnant. We lost a baby. Immediately after we lost the baby, he had to leave to deploy. He broke up with me once before he left because I was having trouble coping with the baby. And then that's not because he was being insensitive, but it's more of my friends warned me that usually after the loss of a baby or a child, people are more likely to get divorced. So it's funny because we weren't even married. We broke up, and we got back. That lasted like 5 minutes, and we got back together. He left to go to Al Udeid, and while he was there, because I had so much insecurity in my life, and you know, he broke up with me again because I couldn't trust him because I didn't trust anybody. I grew up trusting no one because I believed in women were going to try to take your man no matter what, and that men were always trying to leave you and you're not good enough, right? So basically, everybody's trying to hurt you. So it makes things hard for me to have the friends I love is because I trust them 100% fully, and I know that they would never try to hurt me, and they're not trying to take something from me. But it's horrible because the person that you're supposed to trust, I couldn't trust him. Um, and I said it was not paradise because there were a lot of other things that I'm not gonna. It's not my part to tell Andy's testimony, but he had his own things that were damaging our relationship. And basically, we got married in 2021. But it's so funny because I said to myself, why did I wait this long to get married for us to all of a sudden get divorced? I really thought this was why did I do this? I feel so dumb for getting married to somebody and wanting to divorce them already because of all this trouble that we're having. Because people don't realize that other things in your lives can be mistresses. Like being on the computer all the time, that's a mistress. The person working all the time, that's your mistress, And it felt like I just had a roommate. And if that was the case, then I could just end up with my friend Bishop or one of my other friends. I say Bishop because he was like my bestie. And it was like one of those, if I don't ever find somebody, then I'm going to go to California and we're going to be friends forever. And we're going to be like the hags, like the ladies who, the guys and the girls who end up living together for the rest of their lives and they're just friends forever. Anyways, that's a shout out to Bishop. So what happened? I retired in 2021 later on that year. So the reason why Andy and I got married was because if I didn't get married to him, I wouldn't be in his paperwork. And then when I got out of the military, there's no reason for me to be in Japan, which would place me in another long distance relationship. And that's the last thing I wanted, because I had just gone through two other really, really long distance relationships. One that was 5 years and one was like almost a year and a half. And basically, I think my tolerance for long distance relationship was getting shorter and shorter. So when I retired, because I wanted to go see my family, I wanted to dye my hair purple, which I did. I wanted to get my nails done. It was like I finally had freedom. It's like I got my soul back. How exciting. I was going to get an industrial. I was going to get another tattoo because I have a ton of them. But what happened was I got stuck in the States and I couldn't come back to Japan because I needed paperwork. So I'm like, oh no. So I'm stuck in the States. I'm stuck with my family that I was basically going to divorce just a few years ago. So what do I do with myself? Well, I was in this adult Boy Scouts program called The Strenuous Life. It's for men. It's not for women, but they can't legally prevent you from joining. So, and I like a challenge. For those who don't know, I'm a completionist. I have a CDO, as Carlos would say. I have OCD. So when I do something, I want to complete it. I love challenges. And so because they had all these different badges, I thought to myself, you know what? While I'm in Florida, let me go ahead and work on a couple badges. So I worked on my music badge. So I learned how to play the ukulele. That was pretty cool. And then I worked on this thing called the monk badge. And it was like, abstain yourself from a bad habit for 30 days, fast once a month for 3 months, spend 90 minutes in solitude a week. At the end of the day, reflect when you felt closer to God, furthest from God, read a religious thing and do a journal on it. It was crazy. It was the perfect environment because I was at home. It was really quiet during the day. And I started doing my Sabbath school lessons, and I was reading this book about women in the Bible. I started going to church with my family with my purple pink hair. And it basically, I came to a point where I never really liked Ellen G. White because when I used to go to church in South Florida, there was this family that they were really into Ellen G. White, and everybody said, oh, they're just fanatics. So I associated anybody who liked Ellen G. White as a fanatic. And so I was very hesitant to read any of her stuff. But the quarterly we were in Genesis, and my brother-in-law, who him and I had previously complained about, like, oh, her writings are so complicated. What is she even saying? He actually encouraged me to give her like a chance, like, hey, if you read it, you'll get better. So I decided to start reading her notes. And she wrote some notes that in Patriarchs and Prophets that really stuck to me. It was basically about how Adam had essentially chosen Eve over God. And because of that, all this happened. And I realized one of my biggest fears about coming back to God was losing my husband. Because we had no religious life. We never even talked about God. We were living a very sinful life. We were partying, drinking, doing whatever we wanted. And God could be further from our relationship. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a risk. I'm choosing God first, and with the possibility of losing my husband. It's very emotional with me because it's kind of a big deal. So I, through one of our morning chats, I had to tell my husband, hey, so I kind of want to start going to church, He's like, okay, cool. Because for people who know, Andy's really chill. But I didn't expect him to be this chill. Then I was like, I go to church on Saturday because my family's Adventist. So we're Seventh-day Adventists. It's like, okay, like I've never heard of that, but okay, we can do that. So it was like one of those like, whoa, God, what just happened, right? So, but just because that happened doesn't mean that it was instant and immediate, because that was like 2022. So we go back to 2022. We're still lightly drinking. We're still eating whatever we want. And so I introduced Andy to Pastor Doug through The Amazing Adventure, because I think to myself, we're a bunch of kids, so why don't we watch The Amazing Adventures? Because I love those. Those are so much fun. They're basically the adult prophecy seminar, but spoken in a way for children. And so he would just be there sitting at the kotatsu, and he'd be on his laptop gaming, and he'd be listening in on the sermons that we watch. And I'm just pumping Pastor Doug because we did Amazing Adventures, we did Amazing Prophecies. I would pop in some of the DVDs. And it was funny because when we finally started watching him on YouTube, it's like, whoa, who is this guy? He's aged so much because those videos are so old. And what he looks like now, it's so funny. But then at the same time, we found a church nearby. Actually, we tried going to this church initially in Tachikawa, but because of the restrictions, they were not meeting in person. They said, oh, come back at a later time, So we went to the church in it's Harajuku, and in Tokyo, like central Tokyo. And it was just not for us. I felt it was just not for us. So we decided, okay, let's try again to go to Tachikawa. And so we started going like every other week, because it would be like we go there for the service, and because there was a small group of international people, what was it? We only did Sabbath school. We didn't have a pastor. And we were like in a tiny room. They eventually gave us a conference room. That's all we did. We did Sabbath school. But what actually won us over, more specifically Andy, was potluck ministry. I know I'm running out of time. So potluck ministry kept us coming back because Andy loves to cook and he loves to bake. Even though we weren't cooking and baking the healthiest things, that's what brought us back. And the next thing you know, we're staying for potluck. The next thing you know, we're staying for the games afterwards. And the next thing you know, we're going to the Bible retreat. We spent a whole weekend with them. And slowly and surely, God started convicting us. Something that the main couple there, they're the leaders, I think, of the group would be, they basically told us that they could see the things that, because I still had purple hair, they could see us with our anime and all these different things, but they never corrected us. And they just basically prayed and prayed and prayed for us. And basically that convicted us. And I think that's incredible because it teaches me that just because you see someone come to church, that you don't have to essentially, okay, you need to correct this, you need to change this. You just got to pray for them. And if God is truly in their hearts, God will convict you. And I can show you, I threw out so much stuff. It was amazing. And every time I threw something out, I would send the photos to my family members and they're like, whoa, like what's happening? You love this. The combination of my sister sharing Little Light Studios, us watching They Sold Their Soul to Rock and Roll, all those things, slowly or surely, they were convicting us. And thousands and thousands of dollars. It surprises you how much time and money is spent on the wrong things. And I'm huge into Trojan horses. I'm definitely going over my time, so I'm just going to go and say what I got to say. Because the things that you have in house do impact your relationship with God. At nighttime, I would go and I'd be afraid to walk in my own house because I felt like there was something there. And that's probably because there was something there. But slowly and surely, as we started getting rid of all those things, I felt safer in my home. And I felt like I could hear the voice of God more clearly. It was incredible. So, as I mentioned, our church group, they were the family that we needed. They're the church family that God provided for us at a time that we needed Him most. And we spent so much time with them. We love them so much. That's the only reason why I ever go back to Japan, was what we would go for them. Because at this point, I don't love Japan because of everything that's happened to Japan. Because I used to be into anime. Anime's everywhere. I used to be into manga and Japanese dramas. Those things are everywhere. Everything that I used to love are now the things I abhor. So why would I want to be in Japan? And then when you find out historical reasons or other things, the rose-colored glasses are falling off, and now I see everything for how it is. So I don't want this anymore. So I don't even want to live in Japan. The only thing keeping me in Japan is the people I love. Well, they mentioned blessing ceremony, and me and Andy had never had a wedding ceremony. We literally just got married and had the paperwork, and they're like, "Oh wow!" Right? So, but then we had a retired pastor who he retired in Japan, and he said to us, "Well, I don't marry people who are not baptized, Adventist." So Andy, he was Baptist growing up. He had not necessarily regularly practicing, but he did get baptized. But when he mentioned it to one of his family members, they were like, "No, I don't think you got baptized." So he's like, "Okay." So when this opportunity came, he's like, "Okay, fine, I'll get baptized." And I was like, "Oh," and everybody else was like, "Oh." And it was one of those, like, my goal was never to convert Andy. My goal was only to bring Andy to God, for us to have a relationship, because as God removed all these things from our lives, that tumultuous relationship that we had, and that one big thing that was damaging our relationship got out, we got closer together. So when I say God saved my relationship, it is so true, because we were just going to live our lives like this, and it was just, and I felt like, why would I want that for the rest of my life? I already felt, it's just one of those, I felt like I was never going to be happy, because I felt like every relationship I'd been in, it was never, and not that not all relationships are perfect, but people would say like, "Oh, all relationships have problems." When I say this problem is huge, this problem was huge, and it was the tumor that was in our relationship. It was the cancer. So when God took that out of our lives, our relationship is mended, and it's still mending even now. But I'm so thankful for the miracle that God did in our relationship, because people look at us and they're like, "Oh, you guys look like newlyweds." It's because we kind of are. It feels like every day we're rediscovering ourselves and re-loving each other and realizing how blessed we are to have each other, because God did complete us when we finally got together. Okay, so back to the story. So we go through the fundamental beliefs, which ironically, me and Andy had just finished teaching that. Why? Because there was an incident where I taught a short sermonette about Disney and why Christians shouldn't watch it, and this caused some strife between me and I say strife, maybe that's a big word, but it resulted in a little conflict where the person was like, well, that's not in our doctrine. It's actually, yes, fundamental belief number 22, Christian behavior, which Andy found for me. Thank you very much. And it basically says that we're supposed to model a Christian lifestyle. And Disney is far from it. If you didn't know that, look up Little Life Studios and watch some of their videos, and that's enough. Because I know secular people who don't watch Disney things because of those reasons. That's why that blew my mind when I learned that secular people don't watch Disney. Because I just thought that everybody watched Disney. So we went through fundamental beliefs with Pastor Mark, and then we both got baptized. I decided this was the time for me to get rebaptized because I had a new life, a new relationship, not just with Andy, but with God. And I knew that God was going to use us. It was incredible because I feel so blessed to have the husband I have. He has a relationship with God that is beyond understanding. And similar to what other people have mentioned, sometimes it feels like I'm relying on his relationship when in reality I need to focus on my own relationship. And I can't be focusing on if he's not doing things the way I'm doing it. That's his relationship with God, and this is my relationship with God. And so salvation is personal, and your relationship with God is personal. You cannot have a relationship through someone else, or you know what I mean. And I think kids also feel that way. Kids are like, oh, my parents have a good relationship with God, so therefore I have a good relationship with God. It doesn't work that way. Then we had after the what am I saying? Blessing ceremony. We had after our baptism, we had our blessing ceremony, which was an amazing opportunity for us to invite our friends and our coworkers to come to the church because it was like a witnessing and testimony, if you think about it. Because when was the last time some of these people have gone to church, and have they ever even stepped into a church? So it's an opportunity for us to plant some seeds. Actually, I was trying to pass out a bunch of great controversies, but those things didn't come in the mail yet. So it was one of those, you know what, God, I trust your timing and your plan. So maybe that wasn't meant to be at the time. So fast forward, we leave Japan and we come back to the States. First off, I'm going to say no church is perfect, and it was amazing our time being back in the States. I've visited so many churches, even more so as we've gone to and from AFCOE, and every church has its unique characteristic. It's a different. I don't even know. I don't know the word for it, but basically, no church is perfect, and that's why we can't just pick and choose which church we want to go to, because what if you're supposed to be the light for that church, you know? So that's a long conversation for another day. But anyways, so when we left Japan, Andy was assigned to Crete for just a little over a year, and I was going to be with my family in Florida, which was one of those like, God, why is this happening now? And what would have been a horrible relationship before because we had troubles in long distance relationship, and now it was amazing. We had an amazing relationship. Every 3 to 4 months, I would go visit him for about 3 to 4 months, and we went to the church there too, and that was also cool too. I started studying Greek because I was so mad at Japan. I was like, I'm gonna study so much Greek. I'm gonna become Greek. You know what I mean? They think I'm Greek Opa, right? So Kalimera, and it was awesome because the Bible also, we have Greek words there, so that's logical. It makes sense to me. I'm gonna study Greek. Well, keep that in the back of your head. Boop. Well, what was it? So where do we go from this? We didn't know what we were going to do once Andy got out of the military because he felt convicted and he didn't want to be in the military anymore. So once Crete was over, we were like, we're free. We're going to do whatever it is that God wants us to do. And well, we initially wanted to go to Clash of Minds in South Africa because we're huge Walter White fans. And I know that we realized that basically that was for the wrong reasons. But when we went to go visit our friends in Japan earlier this year, we did this big trip where we went to California to visit Andy's family, went to Florida to visit my family. We went to the Ark in Kentucky, and we went to the Creation Museum. But then we went to the 7 churches in Turkey, which was amazing. 10 out of 10 would recommend. And then we went to Japan because they're having a Bible retreat and they're doing a prophecy seminar. So we got to be reunited with our church family. And that was, if I ever questioned whether they love me or miss me, because I suffer from a bunch of things. I suffer from imposter syndrome, separation anxiety, social anxiety. And basically, I don't ever think that the people who like me and love me really do. Like one of my friends, I went to go visit him on vacation, and he took the day off to spend the day with me. And I thought to myself, I wonder if this person likes me. And Andy's like, they took the day off to spend the day with you. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess they like me. I guess they're my friend. So it's funny because that's how I am. I don't think people really care for me, which I know. That's how your brain gets programmed that way. So anyways, where like we visit them and they say, hey, Pastor Mark is like, have you considered AFCOE? And then Vina and Norma were like, oh, have you considered AFCOE? And we're like, okay, fine, maybe we'll consider AFCOE, right? And not that that's a bad thing, just more of a, I felt like we didn't, I guess we didn't know much. It's funny, even though we watched so much amazing fact stuff and Pastor Doug stuff, I guess we really don't know much. Oh, and here's an even funnier thing. I was doing AFCOE online. I was doing the Amazing Disciples online already, and I still haven't completed it. I'm completing it now as we're doing it in conjunction to AFCOE right now. So that's kind of funny to mention that. So anyways, so what happens was when we're in Crete, all of a sudden I get this advert that about just the time I go back to the States, they're doing the Creation Evolution Summit in California. And I was like, you know what, Andy, maybe this is an opportunity for me to go check that out and see it. So he funds, I love my husband. He funds the travel for me to go there. So I go to California from Florida. I literally come to Florida for like a day or two and I go straight to California. I go there and, okay, you know, people always say like, oh, I wonder if one of those people are staying in my hotel room. Walter White and Sonic are in my hotel room. Oh, it's so embarrassing. I actually did a little video about that on my Facebook. And it's so embarrassing because I did totally fangirl and I called him Uncle Walter. And yes, I'm totally dead and dying. But that was a real lesson to myself that yes, maybe we shouldn't have gone to Clash of Minds anyways, because if we see them, then it's embarrassing. It's like, yes, I'm that person who totally fangirled. They scared me because they were both really tall and I'm really small. So, and my legs were shaking. I was like, oh, selfie bye, you know, so embarrassing. I was kind of like trying to avoid them the rest of the weekend. But then I got to meet, but thankfully because of that experience, I was actually really cool and chill when I met Pastor Doug and Clifford Goldstein. Oh, that's so cool. And Rich Aguilera, he was really awesome too. Very surprising and shocking. But because of being able to have that opportunity to scope it out, I was like, you know what? I think this is it. So we go ahead and submit the applications because just because you think this is it, that doesn't mean it is it. We submit the applications. Honestly, there were some trials and tests during that time because we weren't back in the church for that long. So how in the world are we going to have the witnesses or the people? They ask you for these references. And I'm like, we haven't been in church that long. So how are we going to get references? So one of them was, God, if you want this to be, give us the references that we need. That happened. Then was there were technical issues like my stuff I hadn't heard from a while. Then all of a sudden I got an email saying, oh, sorry, somehow your stuff got like lost in the mail, but it's approved and you're good to go. I was like, whoa. And the same thing with Andy. Andy had technical issues, like something for some reason would not go to Pastor Mark. And then it finally got through. It was like, whoa, this is amazing. So slowly, surely. And then I also considered the fact that one of us would get approved, but not the other. But by God's blessing, we both got approved. And it's like, wow, this is happening. So as you can see, there's a map because the plan was to drive from Florida all the way to California. And then as we're stopping there, we stop by and visit friends. We hand out some literature. You know, this might be the last chance I get to see some of these people. I always treat it like it's the last time I'm going to see them. I realize I'm a fast speaker because I was trying to beat the time, but we're so past the time. I could afford to slow down, but you know me, I'm just a fast speaker anyways. So, and that's what we did. We actually went to ASI first. We went to Orlando. That was so cool. Fangirled over some Starting with Jesus members. We met Miss Michelle. She is so awesome. Oh, that was so cool. And, you know, I met Michael Carducci from Coming Together Ministries. I loved it. It was so cool. But this was also an opportunity because we didn't know what God wanted us to do after AFCOE. So Andy's really into gardening. You know, we always thought about doing country living. Does God want us to be missionaries? We'd be ideal for missionaries, but that was one of those, like, if that's supposed to happen, then that happens. There were a lot of questions in our mind. What if things changed after AFCOE? So as we drive up to California, it's amazing because we have the coolest housemates. The two families that we were with shared so many similarities, and we have so many interesting stories that they just connected together. That I was like, everything happens for a reason, and God puts you with the people that you need to be with. And it's so funny because once again, even still, as time went on, I'm like, I don't think these people like me. And I would ask Andy, I'm like, did I say something right? Did I speak well? You know, because I know I tend to put my foot in my mouth, and because I'm the type of person that just kind of speaks what's on my mind, and that's something that we need to learn to control, self-control. But at least you know I'm honest, so I'll give you that much because I don't believe in lying. So we go to AFCOE. It's amazing. Carlos is awesome. Martin's awesome. My devotional and prayer life is changing, and I'm like, whoa, my eyes are being opened. And then we start this fast, and it's tough. It is so hard, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm miserable and I'm sad, and I'm like, I don't know if this is working. I know now that I didn't necessarily do things correctly. I will definitely say that I was unprepared for that, and that's on me. And I think I laid some unrealistic things. I treated God more of a genie, like, God, you're going to give me this, and this is what's going to happen. And it's going to be very specific. And it was crazy because God is not a genie, and God doesn't have to give us anything just because I'm fasting and making myself miserable. That's the equivalent of those people who, like, they whip and they hurt themselves, and it's like, oh, Baal, give us rain or whatever. That's kind of what I was doing. It was crazy because I looked at myself in the mirror and I saw myself, I was gaunt, and I was like, oh, I weighed myself with clothes on, and I was definitely under 100 pounds. I've never been. That's like high school weight. That's crazy. So in the process of this, now I can't speak for Andy, but I'm going to tell you everything that happened to me. There I was. So Andy had his experience on Thursday. If you want to know what that is, then he can tell you that. It was Friday. And there I was sitting there and I was reading. We had just finished doing studying downstairs. I came up to do my self-study, and he comes up to me and he sits next to me on the floor. And he's like, I have to tell you something. I'm like, oh no, what? And so I'm thinking it's the worst thing in the world. And he's like, no, calm down. You can't say calm down because that's not going to calm me down, but okay. And at this point, I'm like this. Like, if I had hairs all over my body, they're like this. I'm like a porcupine. And then he's like, I think God is telling us to go. And I'm not even kidding. Up to this point, I felt like God wasn't listening to me. I felt like my prayers were like hitting the ceiling. I felt like everything, like for this short period of time, it felt like things were going wrong. And then when he said that to me, out of nowhere, I had this crazy calm and peace. And I said, okay. It was weird. I'm not a calm person. And if you see me calm, it's actually because I'm freaking out so hard, I've like self-destructed. You know what I mean? So where do I go from there? We talk to a mentor and we do a prayer. We say, God, if you want us to stay, you got to show us, you got to show us you want us to stay. Because God does answer prayers. And I do believe in stepping out in faith, because in my life, I have stepped out in faith and God has miraculously healed me. That's another running testimony that I have a video about that. And the craziness is this, well, where do we go and what do we do, right? But, the sermon that weekend was telling us about missionary work in Japan. And up to this point, it's funny because one of our AFCOE classmates was saying like, oh, you guys seem like missionaries, oh, you guys are sure you're not missionary works, or you're not interested in this? And she told us about this couple in Japan that they're doing missionary work. And I added them on Facebook, not really thinking much about it. I'm like, okay, I'll add that on Facebook. I'll check that out, But then this really weird thing happened to me within the weeks of AFCOE. It's like, am I going to have to start learning Japanese again? I don't know why, because I would never in my mind want to study Japanese again. I literally threw out all my notebooks, all my textbooks, my dictionaries, everything, because I wanted to get rid of it, because all I wanted to learn Japanese before was to watch anime, read manga, watch my Japanese dramas, and to watch the variety shows. Why would I want to study Japanese again? And something about it always nagged in the back of my head as the years went on. It was like, you're going to need this. And I'm like, no. So what happens? When we hear that testimony, it's like we knew. We're going to be missionaries, and we're going back and we're going to Japan. That's where we're going. We know there's a need. There's 1% of people in Japan that are Christian, and there's 1% of that are Adventists. People there are lonely, they're suicidal, they're high stress. Everything's about what people see. It's all about appearances, but inside they're hurting. There's this thing, I don't even know the proper terminology for it, but it's one of those things. They wear 3 masks. The mask you show the people that on the outside world, the mask you wear for your friends and family, and then the one mask that only you know. And I learned that from Japanese people. And it was one of those, I never knew if a Japanese person was actually my friend or if this was just them being nice. So, we told our classmates that Monday, because up to that point, we didn't know what was going to happen. We told them that we were leaving. And basically everything that I told you, they were there. They saw it, ground zero. They heard and saw everything. And it was crazy because when everybody came around us to pray, it was the first time since things got really difficult that I actually felt like God was there. I'm looking for a tissue. And when they were praying over me, it was like God is there. It was funny because there were people who I did not expect to react the way they did. And when I saw how they reacted, it touched me, because it was one of those, I'm not just some other classmate. These people cared about me, and I care about them, and I still care about them. So I'm just a ball of tears. That's another testimony for another day. So we leave AFCOE, and now we're like, well, what happens next? And it was crazy because we had a lot of people who were very supportive. Some people have an idea of what the reason why they think we left AFCO. I'm speaking from me. We left AFCO because my husband heard God tell him to go, and I followed my husband because I believe in my relationship with my husband. It has taught me how our relationship with God should be. Our husbands are supposed to take care of us. Husbands, take care of your wives. So just like God is taking care of us, I have to trust my husband to take care of me. Therefore, we should be trusting God to take care of us. If my husband's like, you can go take a nap, I'm going to drive, I'll do the rest of the driving, I trust my husband will get us there. And so the same thing with us and God. God is at the steering wheel, and we have to trust him no matter where we go. So the relationship I had, surprisingly, in the relationship mending with me and my husband, it has also made me realize how much our relationship is with God. I don't know if I said that right, but anyways, so there's a Red Sea experience and a River Jordan experience, or Jordan River experience. The Red Sea is when everything is open and you see where you're going next, and you just go, and you're still walking through faith because you don't know that water is just going to go, right? But then there's the Jordan River experience where there's the river, and God has told you he's going to open that river up for you, but you still have to step into that water, and then it's going to happen. And that's what's happened to us. As we took our steps, I'm not kidding, that last day that we were there, we were getting pummeled. We were being pummeled. And it was kind of like people have said it before in the past, where the more resistance you get, the more they're trying to hold you back. It almost felt like that was more of a reason for me to know this is it, right? Because faith isn't always knowing what's going to be on the other side. And we weren't trying to just do this for ourselves, and we weren't doing this for our glory. Because I'm a completionist, and for people, not that people know our reputation, but I knew that when we left AFCO, that this was us risking our reputation, that this was us saying to everybody, guess what? We signed up for this thing and we didn't finish it. And it's funny because it's not that we can't cut it. We were in the military for a long time, and I was in the military for 20 years. Somehow that kind of a lifestyle kind of prepares you for this. Actually, okay, now I'm kind of going off the cuff a little bit, but in the first week that we were in AFCO, Carlos was like, this, and I was like, yeah, whoo. I felt very militant again. I was like, yes, sir, whoo, that's something they say in the Army and the Marines. They say whoo, which is funny because in the Air Force, they don't say that. I got that from when I was deployed in Afghanistan with the Army. But I was basically so even though I don't 100% agree with people being in the military, I will say there are things that we gained from the military that literally prepared us to be Christians and soldiers for Christ. Why? Because if God says it, you do it. No questions. You follow orders, right? And it's amazing how I just don't understand sometimes how some of our own people don't do that. It says so in the Bible. In the military, we have this thing called the TO, the the operating instructions or whatever. I can't remember what it's called, or we have AFIs. Those are their instructions. They tell you everything. We have that. We have the Bible. It tells you everything, but people still want to fight it. They still want to do whatever they want. And and it's all surprisingly enough, we also have those people in the military. We have those people in the military who I don't know why you joined it to fight it. So it's like, why did you enter this relationship with God if you're just going to be trying to fight and do whatever you want? God is willing to give you everything and more than you've ever wanted. All you have to do is listen and follow him. And honestly, since I've gotten rid of all those things that have hindered my life, like I never thought in my life I would never not eat chicken, like fried chicken. I love fried chicken. Oh, chicken sandwiches from Burger King, pizza. I never thought I'd give up things I never thought I'd confess. I love cheese, and for most of my life I told people I didn't love cheese. So I never thought I'd ever give cheese up, and ice cream. Oh, like Pastor Doug, when he said he was addicted to ice cream, like, oh, that's me too. I love ice cream. Put me in a vat of ice cream and I'll eat my way out of it. But God has a way of changing you. You exercise, you start eating, you sleep on time, you do all these things, water therapy, all these crazy things. And one good habit can snowball into a good, better, abundant life. But the same thing can happen the other way. One small bad habit, another bad habit, and it just snowballs, and then you have a miserable life. And that's what I did. I've been in the bottom of the barrel, and now I'm going up, and I'm just like, whoa, God, I don't know where we're going to end up. But this is really exciting. I can see Tower of Babel from here because we're so high up. This is so awesome. So anyways, so we leave AFCO, and we're going back, and now we're visiting friends also. But there are these amazing little, this is the last slide, there are these amazing little divine appointments and weird coincidences. One of them being we contacted AFM to be like, hey, God, is this it? Is there a position available? There are none. And we're like, okay, well, maybe this is not what God wanted. So we start looking at the other places, and we see Ireland and Scotland. And I'm like, why is Ireland and why are they here? I've always wanted to go to Ireland because I used to be huge into green, lucky clovers, leprechauns. I look like a leprechaun, pots of gold. But it was one of those words. I said that to my friend. I don't mention names because I don't want people to be like, I don't want to put people's names out there, except for Bishop. Sorry, Bishop, I put your name out there. And so she's like, I don't know. We had this WhatsApp conversation going on. And the next day, Carlos says, we're going to Ireland. And she's like, are you seeing this? I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, he answered the questions that we had. Then as Andy and I were traveling, we prayed with a Jehovah's Witness couple. We prayed with this other couple at a hotel breakfast. It was from them seeing how we were dressed and or the shirts that we were wearing. Thank you, Little Light Studios, lightwear.com, I think. So it was that was really awesome. There's no such thing as coincidence. And we didn't tell our family. Nobody knew where we were. We literally I actually didn't exercise because I didn't want anybody to track us where we were. But there came a point where I had to tell my family, I said, okay, we're not there anymore. Just letting you know, we're in the States. We don't know when we're coming back. We don't even know we're going back to Florida, because that was true. We actually didn't know whether we were coming back to Florida. What if while we were traveling, God breaks down my car, and then all of a sudden we end up in this town, and guess what? That's where God wants us to be, and that's where we're going to be evangelists, and I'm going to be if there's anything about AFCOE got me super pumped because we're reading Winsome Witnessing and Amazing Disciples. And I was ready. I was going to be a Bible worker. I'm like, yeah, Andy's going to be an evangelist. I had delusions of grandeur. I thought we're going to be working with the Ramos family. It's going to be, we're going to be evangelists. We're going to work together. This is going to be amazing. We're going to preach the word, do Bible studies, bring people to God. It was like, whoa. But it's so funny because man plans and God laughs, right? Man plans, God laughs. And our plans, even though those are my idea of what's really awesome, I know that God has even bigger plans for us. So every church we went to was having evangelistic series, either in the middle, the beginning, or the end. And it was crazy to see the things that we were learning from AFCOE apply to that. Another thing that was really wild was, so we were recommended that, hey, you guys should continue watching the class online because you guys have the links. You can go ahead and continue. And we have the books. They actually gave us the rest of the books that we needed. And so we can continue doing this alongside them. So actually, while we're traveling, we're still going through the devotional. We're still doing Amazing Disciples. We were doing everything that everybody was doing, except for the things that they were given assignments in classrooms. So we were really, really busy because we were driving and still watching class. Sometimes we had bad internet service, but that was cool though, because it gave us a time to rewatch the courses and actually have time to discuss, which was something that I felt I didn't get a chance to, because I'm kind of slow. It takes me some time to process some things. Just because I speak fast and I think fast doesn't mean I process things fast. So so we finally make it to Florida. We're here in Florida. We know that because we're attending this course, and God has plans for us to go to Japan, which I need to more elaborate on that. We cannot live with my parents. We need to live someplace where we can actually fully dedicate ourselves to training and preparing for God. Why? Because we also have household goods that we need to sift through and get rid of. Because even though there was no position in Japan, there is a tent making option, which means we go to Japan, we work there, or you go to school there. What you do, and then while you're there, that's your full-time job. But your part-time job or your halfway job is being a missionary, right? It's kind of like Paul. Paul did. That's why it's called tent making. Paul made tents, and to support his missionary work. So the plan is we're going to go to Japan. I'm trying now. It's funny because I keep forgetting to look at my slides. But basically, as I've mentioned, 1% are Christian, 1% of those are Adventist. We need to study Japanese again, and so we're looking for a place to stay. We're looking for a furnished place, because even though we have furniture, we don't have all the furniture, because we also got rid of a bunch of stuff when we left Japan. And by the grace of God, he provided us a furnished home for the same cost it would have cost to get a one-bedroom apartment where my parents live, and at a beautiful community where it's so peaceful, it's quiet, there's a lot of green, there's nature. I've gotten into bird calling, and the church is a nice small church, which we love too, and we're getting involved with them also. It's amazing how God answers prayers. But it wasn't just our prayers that were answered. It was the renters, owners' places that was being, because they're also trying to sell the house, and it was only for a certain time frame. It's hard to find a place that rents for like less than a year. There's usually a lease or something, or they give you these crazy charges. But what happened was we were like looking for a place for 6 to 6.5 months. We don't know because we don't know when exactly when we're leaving. We're literally trusting God every single day to give us the next step. What happens is, so initially she said no, but Andy's like, oh, okay, well, oh, this is what we're doing. We're trying to do missionary work in Japan, but thank you for your time. Have a blessed day, blah, blah, blah. And then she contacts back saying, I'm a Christian too. And then she tells us the whole story. And basically, between us making some small agreements, like, oh yeah, of course we're happy to let people see the house. Do you mind us, going through our stuff in the garage when we finally get our storage? Everything was perfect. It aligned perfectly. And then we prayed together with her over the phone. It was amazing. God works miracles every day, and those are just small things that I'm mentioning because I'm running out. I didn't just run out of time. I'm so woo. I'm doubling down literally. So we're going to be tent makers and missionaries in Japan. We need to study Japanese again. And what's amazing now is we're different. We exercise. We're healthier. We're eating healthier. As something that was mentioned this morning, through the lesson plan, they had mentioned about being sick and how sometimes you need to let your body build immunity. When I was growing up, I used to take all the shots and I used to take all the NyQuil and all the Benadryl and all this medication. And it wasn't until I got out of the military and I stopped taking all those shots, all of a sudden I stopped getting sick. Here's another thing. The apartment that we lived in had mold in it. So that was also making me sick. So when we moved to Florida, all of a sudden nowhere, eating healthier, no meat, exercising, all these things combined, all of a sudden I'm like, when I do get sick, it's not the way it used to be where it was miserable and horrible. And it was usually just allergies or whatever. But even then, it was not the life that it was before. Now, I'm doing the nature's penicillin though, because I know this is the flu season. So why let that get to you when you can help prevent it or whatever? But anytime I start feeling sick, same thing. You get some rest, you eat properly, you take care of your body, you give yourself a break, and your body will bounce back. And it feels like every year I'm getting stronger and healthier. And because of that, my brain is only getting stronger and healthier. It's incredible because studying Japanese now, it's things that I'm learning things that I've studied before, but for some reason I never realized or recognized before because I used to just base it off of memory and the fact that I'm a visual learner. That's why I really like kanji. I struggle with speaking and listening, but be able to read the kanji, I love that. That's my thing. So basically, long story short now, that's where we're at right now. Andy and I are hunkered down, studying, exercising, serving the local community, and doing everything that we need to do and following God's orders. We are not making this plan for ourselves. I never wanted to go back to Japan. If anything, my dream was to have a country home so Andy can have his garden, I can have chickens, because they're just so cute and fluffy. We had a dream. We had things that we wanted to do, but when God calls, you answer. Here I am, Lord, send me, and I am ready to do whatever it is that God wants me to do. So I'm telling you, that kid who hated their life, hated being Hispanic, suicidal, that was the whole different thing that I never got into, but that's okay. Going through a life and basically a prison, convincing herself that, if I do this enough, someone will love me. If I do this enough, people will like me. If I eat this and I drink this and I do all these things, I bake, I cook, I do everything to make people happy, and still it wasn't enough. And it wasn't until I finally just was willing to sacrifice the one thing that was important to me to God, that God came back into my life, restored it, and was so patient with me as I slowly but surely got rid of all the addictions in my life, because I have an addictive personality. But now, I don't like saying I'm an addict for God, but I would say the void from all those holes in my life have been filled with God. And that's my main goal in my life, is just to be His missionary, His servant, His soldier. And I just want to do whatever it is that He has planned for me. And like everybody else says, and I 100% agree, is if God can take us from where we were and when we thought things were very, very hopeless, then God can take you wherever you are and transform your life and make you have a more abundant life. If you thought life was good, you have no idea how much better it's going to get. With that, I'll let you guys go. Let me give a short prayer and let's all press on forward. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for being the amazing and gracious God that you are. Thank you so much for allowing me to record my testimony. Thank you, Lord, that our testimony can be shared with other people to show that you can change us and transform us. No matter how much we try, Lord, it has to be done. You do it all for us. We just surrender ourselves and give it all to you, and you do it for us. Thank you, Lord, for being so amazing. Forgive me for all my sins, and forgive me for any sins that I continue to do in ignorance or that I still struggle with. Lord, I turn my life completely over to you. Use me as you see fit. I want to be a light to others, Lord. I want to help bring other people to you. And I'm so excited for the day that we get to see you, Lord, in your glory, and we can live happily together in everlasting righteousness, Lord. I'm so stoked. Thank you, Lord, for everything you do for me. Lord, help us want to do your will and let everything be according to your will. I ask you all this in the name of your son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Love you guys, and God bless. Bye.